Yay, we're in.
We're here.
Yay. So today is a very, very witchy collaboration meeting. The energy is really like high and beautiful and intense. And I will say very mermaid-like. I'm wearing pink because of that. Yay. And I will
Love
explain a bit more about mermaid. Well, I'll get you to explain a little bit more about that later. But this is me kicking off Awakening the Witches series. Because there's so many wonderful witches and women doing work about the witch cause that I feel so passionately and strongly about, that I wanted to start off with a very amazing high witch, Eimear. And yay, because I've been working with you in a witches circle for a little while now, and to share some of that, and also Awaken, my witchy play, is airing next week. So all things witches want to speak really loud and proud. But a really good place to start with witches is the journey of the witch. And I know that we have a sort of similar and sort of strange and interesting reclamation of the word and what that means to us. So would you like to start, or do you want me to dive in on the word witch?
I'll maybe start and share some of my journey and then, yeah, dive in anytime,
Yeah.
dear mermaid
Dear
witch.
man.
We shall swim in these crystalline waters
Oh,
together.
yeah. Yeah, and I don't know this, but when I went to the British Museum on the Feminine Power exhibition, which I highly recommend if any witches are in London, they had an Aborigine teachings. They honoured the mermaid goddess, which I didn't know about before. So I thought that was really interesting, because mermaids coming through in the witch, which you'll need to talk about, but also I didn't know that it was like an old teaching. I mean, I feel very mermaid-esque from Lemuria and things like that, but we should start a witch before I go into the lands of Lemuria.
It's all
No,
part of it's all
yeah,
connected,
it's
isn't
all
it? In
one,
this
it's all one.
this witchy web.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, for people who don't know me and my story, I'm Eimear Stassin, and my witchy awakening, it happened by total surprise. I hadn't scheduled this awakening into my calendar at all. And we went on this tour with my family on the Lionsgate in 2020 to the Edinburgh Dungeons. And as I stepped forward to go on mock trial with the wig wearing judge before me, there was just something about this scenario and this role play that I had volunteered to step into on this day, on the 8th of August 2020, in this beautiful city of Edinburgh, which is such a characteristic, energetic city. There was something about that moment when he raised his hammer and crashed it down. It was so realistic, and it just sent these chills and shivers through me that I had to pay attention. And in that moment, it was like a groundswell. I call it the flicker of this flame of remembrance, but it really was like this whoosh of, oh my goodness, what is going on here? This feels so real within me. And then turning to my family and going, this really happened. This really happened. This is a role play trial, but this is so realistic because I feel this has happened to me more than once, and also that I have been up there on that pulpit sentencing others as well, or preaching to others. So it was like the dual aspect. And that really set me off on this witchy trail. And not in a, well, as well as going to Google and, you know, searching up the internet about the witches in Edinburgh, in Scotland, and, you know, all around the world, and what was going on and what happened in his story. It was really this reclamation of her story, my story within me, and how this was resonating for me. So that set me off on this whole witchy trail that's really changed the course without sounding too melodramatic or anything. It really has changed the course of my life and where where my story has unfolded as her story, and also how I do my business and the work that I offer as well. The witch has rebranded everything. So that's kind of a speed version of the story that I feel it ultimately led to a summit in December 2020 called Healing the Witch
I
Wound.
love, yeah, this is how I found you.
Which is
Yeah.
how we met.
Yeah.
Because you got in touch with me and then we connected after the summit. Yeah, so that's, and there are so many parallels and similarities to both our stories and
More synchronistic than that.
Mm.
My poem about being a witch was, I'd sent out and the theatre was going, nothing was happening, and then I just got a response saying, oh, we want to take your poem. And I was like on the sofa going, oh my god, amazing, but nobody gets it about the healing that we need to do and the persecution. And I found your meditation for the summit and you were guiding us through, and I was sitting on my sofa crying, going, oh my god, somebody gets it. I'm going to turn my phone off now.
That's the witches calling you.
No, it was strange. It was a message I'd sent earlier saying, meet the cunning woman, something I posted today.
Ooh.
And I thank you for that reminder, because my cunning woman in my play is called Anne, and I know that I'm working with you with Anya, and I heard you say the other day that goddess is another name for the word Anne. So I thought, oh, chills, they're just rippling through. But I also want to say, because I had a similar thing, and I think it's quite funny that we also both thought we were done with witches a lot earlier. We were like, I've done, you've done the Witch Summit. You're like, that's it. And I was like, I've done the play, that's it. And that's not the witch's journey at all. They're like, once you're in, and similarly, I had mine was an awakening as well, that I've been here before. I had a past life regression when I was working as a healer and saw myself hung as a witch, and just didn't really know why I was like, I'm not a witch, like why would that happen to me? I don't get it. I mean, looking at it from the outside, you might have thought, well, I was training as a healer and that's the first thing I saw. With my knowing now, I go, oh, your healing abilities are coming online, so you're seeing what you've done before. But I'd never see it, I just thought, well, it doesn't make any sense to me. Why is this happening? And then I kind of wanted, as an actress, I was like, oh, I'll be cast as a witch. That would be interesting. I'm really interested in witches now. And then that wasn't really happening. And then somebody, my healer that trained me at the time, was like, well, why don't you write about it yourself? I thought, like most people that are awakening to witches, I've got nothing to say. I don't know what a witch is. You get that imposter syndrome. And so I went to sleep and then woke up the next day and wrote a poem within 5 minutes, which always happens to me. And I know that poetry speaks to you. So I think the witches and poems and sacred stories are strong. And it just came out of me and I was like, oh, I do have something to say, but it's just a poem. And then I went and started to do a play, and maybe a witch is in it. I don't know, maybe she gets hung, and maybe I won't tell anyone what's happened to me, but I'll just make up this character. And then they didn't let me off the hook, and I had to write a lot of my own sort of truth about that awakening. But I think an important part of the witch journey, I think both of us probably experienced this, I think you did as well, is that when you start to step into the interest in witches, then you start going, but I'm not a witch. And so many of us do it. But there's that imposter. I don't know what witches do, so I spent all my time researching what witches do, when all I had to do was look within for the witch that was hung and what she did. But that took me a little while to get onto that. And actually a lot of people were like, oh yeah, you're a witch. And I was like, I'm not a witch, because to me that had connotations of like hag, ugly, outsider, not that, it just wasn't something that made me feel like it does now. It was like, that aversion. Yes.
When were you doing your Reiki? When was your witchy awakening?
So it was
like, how long ago?
6 years ago now.
Okay.
Wow. 6 years ago, because I that the same time as I retrained to be an actor, and I was trying to be a normal actress. It didn't work out for me, which was the second reason I wrote my play Awaken, because that was when my nan, I was training, and the spirit of my nan came into the room, and told me not to be so afraid. And then I auditioned, and I felt the energy of her just course through me, and just felt like one with spirit. And it was the most profound moment. And that is what my play starts with. I've seen spirit, and life is not what you think it is. I mean, I don't say it like that because she speaks in canting, Cockney language, but it was the impetus. And I think that's what so many, there's so much here about witches, but about the light and the dark side, because what I realized was I was killed as a witch, and this is why I had to speak the whole play and speak the truth around the play, because I was spiritual, because I was a medium, because I saw spirits, because I was a healer, because I was a medicine woman. That's why I was killed as a witch. And that's why I feel so strongly about saying you can talk about witches, and people are, and I'm so grateful that they are. I'm so grateful for the apologies. I'm so grateful for the work that's being done. But also, if you talk about the witches, please talk about the women that were spiritual, that were healers, me that was killed too, and you, and a lot of people that I think we speak to. Thank you for getting that out. They were like, yeah, don't, yeah. This is the witches talking right now.
Wow.
So yeah, so did you, I laugh because I remember when we did a session together and you were like, yeah, I've done the Witches Summit, and the witches were speaking to me going, yeah, well, she ain't done 3 yet. She, like, she's not done yet. I don't think you're done with the witches yet.
So, I remember you saying that, and I'm like, huh, what do you know? Little did I know.
Yeah.
How intuitive a witch you are.
I know. So tell me about, because I need you to talk about the Caliac Witch because it's so powerful and coming. But from that kind of witches summit, which was brave and bold, but then it went bigger and beautiful.
The energy was so incredible. It's like beyond what I could have ever imagined. And at the same time, there were moments where I really felt like I am going to be killed again for doing this, for speaking about this. It felt so risque and so daring. And at the same time, I had to do it. It's like what you mentioned at the start of, like, the witches, once you step into this circle of, into this witch's wheel, really, once you step in, that stepping in is a commitment. It's like a pledge.
Sorry, before you go on, just briefly say what the witch's wheel is for people that won't know.
Oh yeah, so the change in the course of all my work, I've kind of rebranded everything as witchy. So the Celtic medicine wheel is something that I've been called back to over recent years, around the same time as the witchy experience, probably around about 2019, 2020, that I was reconnecting with my Indigenous Irish roots, and therefore exploring how we lived in sync with the seasons and the wheel of the year. So there are 8 festivals that were and are honoured around the wheel of the year. And at the time of this conversation, we're coming up to Summer Solstice. So the festival of Summer Solstice, honouring the brightest time of the year. And as Indigenous ancient people that lived with and in sync and were held by the land, there was so much reverence and ritual and honouring that took place and that takes place now with and on and together with the land. So the witch's wheel for me is reclaiming the title of witch and being a witch myself. As you were sharing, it is like this, looking inside and remembering and piecing these parts of ourselves back together again in this remembrance. It's like sewing ourselves back. to wholeness, weaving ourselves whole. So part of that is walking and learning about and teaching about the witch's wheel, and how that can and is become a far more sustainable way to live in this earth, with Mother Earth, with all the beings that live here, and also with so many witches, seen and unseen, in this world, that are willing to step in with us and support us. So that's a short version of the witch's wheel.
And because I jumped in, you said how it was basically, you were saying that your journey from the Witches Summit to that, and what was that? Yeah, because I think that's beautiful, and I don't know whether that ties in, that thing that I was saying earlier about, oh, I was killed as a witch for being that, and for speaking to everything that I do today as a healer. I was butchered back then for that, which is why I need to speak into the witches, her story about what's missing from the books and the history about witch persecution. But I think it's so beautiful that you do so much work with the land and the seasons and everything else, because that was that's proper pagan witches gnosis that's coming back. And do you remember being killed for that?
Oh, it's too traumatic. I don't want to go into that. Well, yes, it's initially so the trial, being on the mock trial, really awakened that within me. But I didn't have a vision like your awakening was like. It was like this knowing within me that this has happened. I just know, I can feel it in my bones, in my cells. And when I did the Healing the Witch Wound Summit and spoke my truth, which was the poetry that had surged forth, there was so much of this coming through in the form of creativity and expressing the witch wound, or the witch as an archetype, and myself. It's like a triple spiral, that the poetry, speaking my own words, which ultimately aren't just my words, they're like the words of the witches, that I felt like I was being killed again, that I was being strangled, that I was being drowned and submerged, that I was being hung, because the restriction I was feeling in my throat, in this real, live, visceral sense, then therefore was that knowing of this has happened so many times, for speaking, for expressing, and probably, as for being a woman of the land. Plus, I've had healing sessions with you where we went to 3 past lives where I was either killed for being a witch, or on the other side, on the battleground, wielding the sword. And it just made so much sense, because it makes so much sense. It's like more pieces of the puzzle slotting into place. But the one life that I remember through your healing session is where I was this gypsy girl, which is so interesting, because I know we'll talk about your play, Awaken, because when I sat down to watch your play, I was like,
well, yeah.
Holy feckaroni, there she is. That's my dress you've got on. And that was already
a healing session, and you were talking to me, and I knew that you hadn't seen the play or anything. I was like, wow. She's gonna, yeah, Sarah's gonna speak to her.
You've got my dress on. Like, whoa. And I had this brown dress and the white apron, and like this gypsy girl in the field picking my buttercups. I've always loved buttercups, and roaming about the long grass, which I view are like fairy fingers, and like the little buttercups are like little chalices for the fairies. Anyway, that's where I was, just this harmonious being, peaceful, in sync with the elements, and just enjoying the changes in the seasons.
I want to add that I think it's very interesting, because when I think of poets, I think of the bardic arts, but it's a very masculine practice. And what I'm being reminded of is around the time witch killings were rife, women weren't allowed to speak at witches couldn't speak at their own trials, which is particularly why Awaken's been brought into court today. So a woman, myself, has been able to give voice to all of this, which is why it's so important. But also they weren't allowed to get on stage either. So when I first wrote this piece for myself, and some people go, oh, is that indulgent, writing your own part? I was like, no. One, it wasn't your life that was stolen, so I'm going to take that and speak into that. Two, I'm a healer, and people don't get on stage and speak as a witch, as a healer, and it's important. And three, back in the day, I wasn't allowed on stage. So if you're going to kill me for being a witch back in the day, and I couldn't even get on stage, I'm going to come back and do a double whammy at you. So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that was like, no. You can only silence a witch so much, that in this time and in this age, and I do encourage people on their own witch journey to remember what was stolen from you, whether it was a gift or the ability to get up and speak in public, all of these things that we've had stolen from us as women and as witches. But as witchy women, it's even, we're being called, because we're in a spiritual war right now, whether people can see it or not, we are. So it's very important that witches reclaim the voices and the magic and the spells. But the other thing I wanted to say about was the persecuted, the persecutor. And I remember we spoke about that before. And I think because I think that's another block on your witch's journey. That when I was writing Awaken and I was playing the victim, the hanged witch, and then I went, oh my God, the other character that I was writing who persecuted the witch, I was just going down that timeline and going, oh, me and my witchy history is so deep from being on both sides of the wheel. That's how much witch history means to me, because I've persecuted and I've been persecuted. And that was quite a dark night of the soul when I was doing that alone. So I kind of wanted to animate that, because we've both spoken about it. And I know other people, I think I came across the Silver Spoon Collective talked about being on both sides of it, and I was like, yay, sisters, thank you for speaking out. And it just makes you feel less alone with it, because if you're not necessarily working with healers or addressing your witch history because you don't know about it yet, and I do believe a lot of people are coming to this kind of awareness, that people speaking into that, and not because it can trap you when you do, because I do past life regressions to get to my art, to my writing and my work, and it can trap you, because once you start to see the dark, you go, oh, I don't want to go there, and it can trap you in your business, because reclaiming the gifts that you used to use and you get scared, reclaiming the damage that you've done in your power, you get scared of using your power. So I just wanted to mention that, to know that you can get through both of those and still come out stronger for facing both of those sides.
Yeah, and I feel I want to ask you then, how deeply, because it's interesting, how deeply do you go into that? Because I'm thinking of, because I'm trained as a soul-based coach as well.
Yeah.
And well, a huge part of the training is that we really anchor in what you want more of.
Yes.
What you want more of. And then the problems, the blocks, the issues, they come up. They come up when they're ready to come up. So I wonder how then, when you do your past life regressions, how much do you go into that?
Yeah. And it's such an interesting question that I've been having a lot around a lot of people, because I've just been asked to step into more shadow work and more entity work.
Shadow work, that's it.
Yeah, more of the shadow priestess that I am, and more dark agenda. And I remember I was speaking with somebody, and she said, oh yeah, when I was trained as a healer, I was told not to protect myself, that if you're just of pure light, you don't need to. And I was like, oh my God, oh my dear goddess, no. Because I think the problem is, it is terrifying, it is tough. And I will speak from a place of, very recently on your circle, when we were traveling into New Grange, and I mean I very much identified with the archetype of a Carliac. We have to speak about Carliac as well.
She wants to be spoken
yeah,
about.
she's speaking the whole time. But the sort of spiritual activist rebel witch that I came up with when we were in our circle, and she was like, you know, speak about this. And what came through to me was stuff that I didn't want to look at, which I'll talk about in a moment. But I was like, oh, I just don't want to be in this dark space. I just want to be of the light. But I was lucky in my training as a healer that my teacher was really tough on me about spiritual bypassing. So I think the problem is, if you don't look at both sides of the coin, you don't look at the shadow, then the shadow gets away with it. The shadow stays because you're not bringing it into the light. So I think, I mean, I've been chosen this path particularly, but I think when you're on any level of initiation, you have to really start to step in to the dark work, but just at the right time in your life, that you can go back to the light, the shadow, because you can get swallowed in it for sure. And then that's, you know, that's not good either. But you know, that you have tools to raise your vibration and protect yourself properly, and that you're there, that you can do that. I wouldn't say just go and explore. I'd say, you know what you're taking on, and know how to protect yourself fully, and know that you're at a level of enough self-love and self-awareness that you're not going to, and also know to get help when you need it, you know, because I mean, I think that's a choice, and that's the reason I've been doing shadow work over here while working in circles with you, because you hold the light so strongly. And if I was going to go and do shadow work while doing shadow work, then I'd just be down here. So it's that balance. And it's lovely. So I'll talk about what came through when we did a journey to Newgrange in your witches circle that we're doing. And it's a delight for me, because even though I wrote the whole of Awaken, I didn't really honor the witch's wheel that much. I hadn't honored the planets and the seasons and the cycles, and I knew it was something was coming up for me so much to sit with the rhythm of the earth, and it feels such a blessing to start living like that again. But I got a big strong message about reclaim our name, about witches reclaim our name, and the witches were busting my ass. They were not happy because because
this is witch language, by the way.
Yeah. Because they were like, you know, there is a lot of dark in the arts of witchcraft, and if we don't look at this, like if we don't look at the shadow, and that people do worship the devil, like there's entities in the spiritual, you know, like there's mind control, which I speak about, which I'm going into more in my second play. If we don't acknowledge that, actually, I know for me, when I did persecute witches, it's because I was of the light and I knew some were working with the devil. So I might have killed the wrong witches, but I got the mind control program that they weren't of the light, and some of them weren't. So that's why some of us have persecuted witches, because some people do work with the devil. Some people have sold their souls. And you can't go on a healing journey and work with the spirits of goddesses and angels and all of this without going, there's a whole other realm out there. And that's the spiritual war we're in. And that's what the witches really came through to me to say, look, you know, we were hung, you know, the reason was it was to stop our breath. It was one of our elements. We were burnt. It was one of our elements, the fire. We were drowned. It was our element, the water we worked with. You know, we weren't buried properly. This is our gnosis of how you bury a body, right the way from ancient Egypt. And we were told, grant them not to have familiar spirits to go whoring after them, that we couldn't work with spirit by people that were working with the devil themselves. Okay, have I said enough? Yeah, I think that said it, witches. So what I'm saying is the power is in looking at all sides, but just be ready, because it's tough. And have your tribe to pull you back, because what happened after I channeled round in your journey was you brought me, because we're between seasons, And it's very clever that you've done it between. And I went into Anya, who it was beautiful for me because she went, mermaid. And I went, what do you mean? She's like, you need to teach like a mermaid. She just went, buy the pink top, which I'm wearing today. She was like, wear colour, dance around and be the divine feminine and step into that. When it gets dark and you're bringing on this, she was like, just do, you know. And even before I would usually sit down before having a talk and meditate. She was like, no, dance, play, explore and see what wants to come through. And you'll still say some hard-hitting spiritual truth, but you'll say it with a beautiful light energy. And I think that's how we do both. And that's why I'm so grateful that you that you dance in the light, but you're also holding a hand for the truth of the witches.
Wow.
So tell me about the Kaliak, because she's speaking through me and I feel like I don't know her well enough, but I just hear her.
I just want to say that the elementals, and wow, like the connection of why we were killed, why we killed, and the relationship with the elements being turned against us, and because of that knowledge and gnosis, that's groundbreaking. It really is.
Yeah. And that's why, you know, when it came through in your circle, and we had a chat, didn't we? We were in circle, instead of journeying, we just talked.
Yeah.
And I was just like, because I remember you said, oh, I just get the impression we need to speak and that things are coming through. And it was so powerful for me to speak about that, because it was heartbreaking for me to speak about it for the first time, that because I do identify as a witch, and it breaks my heart to think what people have done in my name and our name, and that people would be thinking or wishing or putting bad energy on witches that are of the light, that these open, you know, healers and these light workers, and that still doing it in our name, because. And if we're not bringing what witches really are, the actual witch, then we can't wrestle to the fact that, yes, some witches have really done harm, but many, many haven't, and many need to reclaim that name and work in the name of the witch, because the witch is the wise one and the powerful woman. And you get to the stage on the journey where you go, I do know what witches are, and I'm going to call myself one with pride and power. And I know you're the same, Sister Witch.
Yeah, and it is the journey as well, because absolutely at the very start I'm like, I'm not a witch, I'm doing this work, it's coming through me, I'll express it, I'll do that, and then move on, you know, until people start introducing me in talks and interviews like, this is Eimear, she's a witch. And in the beginning I'm like, cringe, can we just do take two please and choose something else? And until it's like, wow, of course I am, this is who I am. And yeah, just something else that was coming through when you were talking about the light and then going into the dark, and the balance of these two, and acknowledging these and not bypassing. What I was seeing was a huge anchor that's keeping us, no, not keeping us, that's holding us here, rooted in this place where we are, so that we can move between the darkness and the light. And like, it's like a, you know, a cartoon anchor. And the other thing that was coming to mind was that the code was broken, the witch code, or the code of the witches. It was broken, it was twisted, it was distorted, the truth wasn't upheld. And now in this life, we're repairing that, or upholding and remembering what that true code is. The witch's code, the Kaliak's code. So the Kaliak, who is she?
Yeah.
Here she comes.
You're like, she's a wild, primitive being in your eyes, isn't she?
Yeah. It's like the battle cry. So she came through to me that very same week. of course, this is how synchronicities happen. When I had the witchy experience on the 8th of August 2020, that very same week I was teaching, it was my very first class that I was dabbling with, of teaching about the medicine wheel. And as I do with all courses, actually, I have the outline of what I'm going to teach about, but then I wait for the inspiration to come. And sometimes that can be a little bit of a nervous wait, because it can just be that day or an hour before, or, you know, where it's like, okay, this is it. So the Cailleach came through to me as a poem, exactly like you explained of your poem that came through in 5 minutes. It was exactly the same thing of, here it is, this poem about the Cailleach witch. It's almost like the witches were like watching and going, she's now awakening to this witch within her. So let's fuel this, let's keep this energy flowing. And the Cailleach witch spoke through me, and even saying her name and reclaiming that name, because Cailleach is the word for witch in the Irish language. So witch is Cailleach in the Irish language, and she is the creator of the Celtic lands. So her energies are held within Ireland, within Scotland, I believe within the Isle of Man. I don't know if you came across her there when you were visiting Wales. So the Celtic lands, and her namesake is remembered and held within the names of the mountains, certain stone circles, certain rocks dotted around the land. So in my view and understanding of the Cailleach, she is older than the earth and the land herself, because logically she has to be, because she is the creator of the land in the myths. And in terms of the witch's wheel, or the Celtic medicine wheel, she resides over the northerly direction and over the winter solstice. So from Samhain to Imbolc, or the time of Halloween, and then February time, there's the winter solstice. So she breathes out her cold Arctic breaths to bring in and call in the winter time. And her air elemental, as she blows or speaks her fierce words, it's like she shakes and rumbles the earth and blows the leaves off the trees and brings in or evokes. She doesn't invite, she evokes or commands that winter shall happen, you know? So her energies, I feel, are very fierce, and in a fierce motherly crone way. And one of my teachers, Amantha Murphy, who talks about the way of the Shavan, which is the yes woman, the wise woman, she's talks about the Cailleach witch incorporating all the other deities on the wheel of the year. So all the other 7 deities or characters or gods or goddesses in this case are incorporated and held within the energies of the Cailleach, as the crone, as the hag, as the wise one. And I personally love that, because it's so efficient, and I feel the Cailleach energies are so efficient, because she will blow through you and just blow out all the crap. Just away with it. You know, this is almost a command and a demand as well. Just blow it all out from you. All these blocks, all this, you know, this imposter syndrome, all these voices, she'll blow them out so that there's space for her to speak through you.
Oh, we've been working together. That's the witch I recognise.
Do you know her?
Yeah. Wow. Now I can see what's happened to me the past few weeks.
And I love it, and there's so many stories about her.
Yeah.
And when I visited her place at Lough Crew, so I'd written her Cailleach, her poem, and the witches had spoken through me. This is the beautiful synchronicity, and you mentioned hindsight, or like looking back. Yeah. This is how you understand it now, because you go, I see, I understand even more. And the mantra had all been about returning to your power, step onto your throne, it's time to come home. And the poem of the Cailleach was that mantra was incorporated into that. But at the time, I didn't know anything about her sacred site in Lough Crew and her stone throne, that when you sit in it, you face, it's at the northerly direction of her round cairn. It's all covered in stones. So it was just really beautiful when I learned more about this site in Meath in Ireland, that's over 6,000 years old. That is the place of the Cailleach. It's called Sliabh na Callie, which is the mountain of the Cailleach.
I love it. You're like a big encyclopedia of witchy knowledge. It's so cool. You're doing 8, is it 8 faces of
Yes. Yeah.
I thought that, I mean, I'm excited about it all, but the one it drew me in with the ghost. That was the one that went, oh, I don't know why. It just spoke. Just really interesting to hear about the 8 faces, because that's what I love about being an identified witch. There's still so much I don't know about which actual her story, which, you know, she's the original witch, you know, and I don't. She's been speaking through me, but I don't know her yet.
Yeah, I feel the same. It's like a relationship, getting to know each other again, over and over again, and different aspects of her. So yeah,
and so just you're running it when for 8 weeks for.
Yeah, so this is a new program that's come through, and it really is delving into the different faces of the Cailleach witch. And it starts on the 14th of July. Firstly, I was thinking, oh, you know, maybe I'll do it later. And it was like, no, you've got to do this now.
You weren't having that.
We're just back from summer holidays, you know, la, 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 la. No, the inspiration will be there. So the 8 faces of witch, the 8 faces of Cailleach, or the other way around, it is an exploration of the 8 faces of her as the chief witch herself, as the creator. Initially, I thought it would be bringing in different deities that I felt connected with her energy. And then it changed to actually going into the Irish language and the meaning, the different variations of the word witch in the Irish language, because I know this is something we were going to talk about as well, is that we have alluded to, is the word witch and calling ourselves a witch. And why? You know, why do we? Because I've questioned this in the beginning for myself, of why do I have to keep using this word? Because not everyone likes it.
Yeah, and I think it's funny because just before we spoke, it kind of dropped in that I re-edited the very end of my script to say witches, particularly instead of women. I was advised to put women, and I changed it to, and I was speaking for all of us, 9 million of us, the witches, and I said the word witch. And I will say 9 million again because I've been pushed back on that there wasn't 9 million killed. And I'd like to say on that point, I think the witches know how many of us were killed. I've met many. So sorry, rebel witch coming out again.
Wow.
That, you know, that I actually think that's probably an underestimation. You know, if you think when I'm talking witches, I'm talking about the original witch, you know, the right throughout our history. And we already know that half of the history isn't counted. I started with Lemuria, you know, Atlantis. We brought in one of your circles, you know, we're older than we know in the history books, and we know it. So there's obviously been more killings for being a witch because we're going back to the beginning of time. So 9 million is tiny. But I put it in at the end and said witches because I think if you take away the term which, you're just passing over the power. And when you spoke of it about it being the, you know, original naming, it's like, well, if I give you the name, you that aren't necessarily using it for the light and the gnosis and the creating the better 5D reality that I want us all to come together in, then I'm giving it to you. If I take it back and say, no, I know how to use it now. I've learned through my many lifetimes the good and the bad and the damn right ugly. And I see you because I've been through this path. I'm going to take the name back and I'm going to use it exactly how she wants me to. So for me, it was like, I have to use the name witch, and I have to own that name, and I have to walk with that name and honor it, because that's why you hung me. So yeah, I can't silence it in myself. So I think it's so important that we don't give the name away. And it used to be about me reclaiming in the dictionary because I wanted it not to be an ugly old hag. And now I'm like, I don't even care what you put on your paper. You don't even know in the dictionary what half the words really mean anymore.
Yeah.
So it's like, no, the true way now is to reclaim it and own it. And I think that's why what I got to by the end of, right, because it took me 5 years to write Awaken. I wasn't ready 5 years ago to have any of this through, to stand in this kind of power. I didn't even have the end scene for Awaken until like a few weeks before we went up to that ending. That there wasn't that ending. Which I know you've seen. I won't say anything about it, but that came out of me right at the end. It was like, oh, that's what you wanted to say. Yeah. So
Wow.
yeah. So,
When
and
yeah,
sorry.
I was just going to talk about the experience for me of experiencing Awaken live in person.
Yeah.
Because first of all, it was the first time we met in person,
Yeah.
which was just like
It wasn't
not
though,
it.
was it? It wasn't.
No. I was going to say it wasn't even like long lost friends. It was just like, oh, here, like soul friends
Yeah.
from many lives.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was so emotional meeting you, and then taking my seat to witness this unfolding. And it was like a parallel to when I to my witchy experience of turning to my children and going, this has happened, all of this going on mock trial. And in Awaken, there were so many scenes where I was turning to my friend beside me going, this has happened. This has happened for Cheryl. This is real. It isn't just a really powerful play. It is real. And by the end of it, and when you share that last line for all the witches, and I was sobbing. I was sobbing, like tears, and it felt so healing and so moving and so cathartic. It was really the most powerful experience I've had of
And it,
and the first experience of 5D theatre. So thank you.
well, this is the first foray into 5D theatre, so I was like, whoa, here it is. And it's funny, I didn't know that you usually catch the eye of who's there, not obviously because it's not till the end you direct to the audience. I didn't see you until right at the end, and I saw it like tears, and I was like, Azima, she's crying, and I was like, why is she crying? Because you're in it, and you're like, and then I come out of it afterwards, and I was like, yeah, quite a few people were in tears, and I was like, oh. And it's funny now I watch it from the outside, and it's like, oh yeah, but yeah, I'm, what do I want to say about, yeah, just that this play is and was written for people like us, which I know that there's many. So it's kind of why I like to be very vocal about the play being partially autobiographical, and so that people feel understood and honoured in theatre. I don't think witches have really had their day yet in theatre, or in many places, but this is my revolution to try and bring the spiritual dimension into theatre more. It's my soul story, and it's the reason I'm sharing it. I shared the reading on Earth Day, which was magical, and it's now going to be airing from Summer Solstice, which is like making witches very happy, and also to be able to reach people that perhaps aren't that into theatre. I know for me, I've lost a lot of interest in a lot of old ways and old stories. I'm not really into TV that much, which is quite surprising for an actress, but I'm not, because I don't feel represented. So I'm hoping that this is my offering to the world to go, you know, our stories are coming through in different ways, and this is my part, and I hope it helps heal and support other people too in their own witch journey.
It already is. I wanted to ask as well, what was it like for you acting your autobiographical story?
Yeah, really, really tough, mainly because, as you're aware, that my dad's been very sick. So my dad um, had cancer and operations, and in the play, she comes back as a palliative care nurse, the medium. So there was times I had to stop writing because my dad was rushed up to emergency hospital. So I think that was the hardest part, the build up to it. And then I thought, if you can get, and then a week before, 2 days before, some of the people had COVID, you know, it was just like, this isn't going to happen. And then I was like, do you know what? And then I reminded myself a few times, and I think this is really important for spiritual creatives to say this, that I was like, this is bigger than me. I know this on the journey that it's gone on. This is bigger than me. So stop, trust that it will go where it needs to go. It'll be seen by who it needs. I constantly do the work because it's my life work. As you no doubt know, you turn up and you go, okay, guide me. So we got there, and that felt magical, and my dad had been given the all clear, and you know, even though things are still challenging, I was like, my dad's so want to be there too, you know, he's, you know, my family have supported me in so many ways. You know, my sister's been an angel, an earth angel. And then I got up there and I got blocked. So we did I got blocked, as in it's too close to home, and I was like, I can't do this. And I did have a mini meltdown, and I have to say, Law, who's our director, and Ellie, the producer, who's also in it, the fact that it's your sisters, your witchy sisters, that hold space, they got me through it and got me to be, you know, that actually, that to not turn it around and realize that it was my fear of, and I was like, oh my God. And then I sat down and we done a really a run that I was like, God, what was that? The first one we filmed. And I was like, this is what I've been working towards, showing the film. I sat outside and looked at the water, because Beacon Arts Centre is so beautiful. And I said, what's it all about? And Sarah Spindler, who's the character that I play, spoke to me, and she was like, this is for me. Like, why are you worrying about it? Like, you're calling me home, love. And I was like, yeah, I know, but am I doing you justice? And she was like, well, just acknowledge that I'm here as a star. And I realized I hadn't been acknowledging spirit enough. And so I said, this is for Sarah Spindler. And I went back in and did it. And I realized that we have a bit of footage where there's a light flickering around my head, and all that day and the day before in the reading, she was there, and it was like, I talk about spirits, this is the whole point of the play, and then sometimes you get in your own way as a human, and it was just, this was for her, that we started this journey together. This was the witch that was hung. I wanted to just say one story, and then it turned into so many stories, and I got scared because I felt like I was holding all this witch history and putting it right. And then she just said, come back to me. And then by doing that, I realized it was her, and then it was everyone, and I just felt we had this moment of calling my soul part home, and so it gave me such a huge healing by the end of that week, that I'm so grateful for. And now it feels like it can go into the service, because I didn't get that completion until that moment. And yeah, I haven't shared that before. Trust you to get that out of me.
It's not me, it's the witches.
Yeah, I know.
And where was Sarah Spindler killed then? Was that in
Yeah,
Scotland?
interestingly, Bury St Edmunds, which yeah, so I need to go to that land and tell the story there. She was killed. She was the famous case is Matthew Hopkins, the Witchfinder General.
Right.
And she was killed with Anne Alderman. So actually, there's names that I speak right near the end, and
Yeah.
they're the people that died together. And yeah, and in that honouring, I add in everywhere I go to take the play. I add some names in the history, so the story will evolve a bit to honour. And it was so lovely. Juliana from the Remembering the Cues, which is Scotland charity, said, I've been working with these women and you name them. And I was like, yeah. And it's like, I guess it goes back to what we were saying at the beginning of this chat about naming things and how important it is. And so naming the witches, the actual names of people, whether they were witches or not, it's not for me to say on everybody. I can only talk about my own witch, that I was a magical witch, but also that the witches that are spiritual beings, and to be honest, aren't everybody a spiritual being, so aren't we all witches at the end of the day? But you know, I'll leave that up there. But that it's important that we take our names and we speak the names. We speak the names and we speak the name witch.
Yes. Yeah. And in doing so, we're reclaiming so much. And even saying the name is the vibration. It's like this release out into the world once again of this energy,
Yeah.
these beautiful beings. Wow.
I've come full circle. I don't know about you. I'm like,
it feels that way. And then I wondered if you wanted to say more about mermaids, but if it feels full circle.
No, listen, mermaid. Because they're like, oh, let's end with a bit of like, yeah. Now I'm just hearing Under the Sea. I always play that Disney song. I just absolutely love it. Whenever, yeah. So whenever I have a hard time, and maybe this is a nice bit of advice because, you know, I know that my play can be quite triggering. For some people, I know it can be quite tough. Yeah, and there was times myself when I was like, oh, what? And I've actually put in like songs and like dancing with magic in it to because this is how I do things when things get dark and heavy. I will just, you know, play like a mermaid, you know, like dance around, do silly things, and bring in that light, magical kid energy. Because if you are a witch that's working with spirit, then you're also a magical kid that was always working with spirit when you were younger, that knew like light danced around, that played, that told stories, that knew that there was truth in your stories, and knew that the fairies were in the garden, and knew that there was light in the trees. That's the type of kid you were if you're a woman witch today. And so the mermaid energy, and I've only just realized this, so thank you, is the calling back of that kind of magic, which is such pure earth beauty magic that's so fun and so silly and so simple. And that's what we were all doing, the pure witches. So we may have been misaccused or turned against, but it was like we were making your herbs, we were singing you back to health, we were dancing you into love and being, we were giving you all our heart and everything we had to give. And yes, we were witches, but you didn't need to be afraid of us because we were love. We were just pure love. Oh, little Shez is happy. She has spoken.
That's amazing. Wow. It's
Yeah.
reclaiming this magic, and it makes sense then now for me that with this time of year resided over at Summer Solstice by Anya, who is Anne or Anna in English, and that she is the triple goddess, the mermaid, the fairy queen, and the witch.
Oh.
And this connection of Loch Gur, of diving deep into this beautiful water, but also on the banks is Tir na Nog, the land of the youth. So this youthful energy. I've just made this connection with the mermaid
Like
and the mer people.
Going, duh, to us, like, well, they got there in the end, bless them.
Yeah. just made this connection now. Like,
wow. Yeah, and one last share, because you shared about the Atlantean, because I feel that being the Lemura and mermaid energy came in, about the connection with. Can you just share which land it was that we covered? Is it?
Loch Gur,
Yeah.
Loch Gur, and yeah, yes, Loch Gur, and the waters of Loch Gur. So this ancient site and ancient lake is in the west of Ireland, in Limerick, outside of the city of Limerick, and the lake is horseshoe shaped, and there's what used to be an island, but it's now, there's a landslip to this little hill called Knockadoon, where the entrance to Tir na Nog is, in the cave, through the Cave of Echoes. But the water of Loch Gur, it's what struck me when I visited there last year, was that it just is so magical and so peaceful, and is imbued with so much tranquility that it literally, it took my breath away when I stepped onto the land and faced towards the lake. And the waters, they're said to be really special magical waters because it bubbles up from the earth, from springs underground, and it just makes sense. It's so crystalline and pure, and it's not fed by any other ways. So it's just this pure ancient waters bubbling up. So then in one of the myths, as well as being associated with Anya as the triple goddess, one of those being mermaid, there's also a myth that says Atlantis is buried beneath the waters. And there have been seashells found beneath the waters, and too many for like birds to just have dropped them. But it's not fed by the sea. But one myth I read was that there is, if you go deep, deep down and swim out, that there is an exit that gets you to the sea, to the west coast of Ireland. But there's all these shells, and then there's rocks as well that people have found under there that are like otherworldly. So this is one of the thoughts or the stories, that Atlantis lies hidden beneath the ground.
And so we've been to other realities and back again.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I feel like there's going to be so many magical storytellers that bring that gnosis forward, as we do in your groups, where we journey to different places and stuff comes up. And I know with my channel, my work, I've always been like journeying and taking people into different realities, because these are the stories and the knowledge that's coming back at this time, which I love.
And that's the power of the co-creative connection, when we come together.
Yes.
Like this, and really the magic and the gnosis, which is a word I've learned from you and began using, because it just,
it's a beautiful word, isn't it?
is, and it just describes it so well, that this deep wisdom can bubble up just like that water from Mother Earth within our earthly bodies.
Oh, and I love that that's saying that the witches are reclaiming the elements, the water, the air, the fire. Because I was dancing to This Girl Is on Fire before we met, and I was like, yeah. And they're reclaiming the earth and, you know, spirits. I mean, we don't do this without the witches here and there and everywhere.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to share about Awaken?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah.
The live launch of Awaken.
Yes, of course. Yes. So, yeah, Awaken launches on Summer Solstice. It's a script in hand reading, so as you've seen, but we had the joy of working with a lighting and sound designer to add a little bit of magic and spirit into the piece for the first time ever. But the story has been completed, so I was really excited to share it with the cast of actors. And now, it'll be online for 3 weeks, which can be accessed through, it'll be going on my website, or you can email me for the link. I'm going to put that in the in the comments so that it can be added on there. And yeah, it'll only be on for 3 weeks, and the idea is to kind of share it with the healing community and people that resonate with this topic and don't feel they've been represented, or just very interested in a different way of theatre, which is 5D theatre, which is adding a supernatural element. And it's stories spoken from the soul, so it's kind of what we do as healers in journeys and everything else, and it's mine on a page. And hopefully the vision is to get it fully performed and toured to the places where many witches were killed, but also where there's many powerful ley lines to reclaim our gnosis and tell our stories in these lands. So this is just the start, but it feels really right to share it on Summer Solstice and share it now, and to help get a healer out there into the world and start to heal the collective. And there will be a meditation shared with it as well, so if it does resonate or bring something up for people, there's a meditation to do afterwards. And I will be doing a sharing circle after the first day about 9 o'clock, for anyone that wants to kind of chat about it, or it's not a closed space, because we witches will have a lot to say, and it's a play for us. So yeah, there's that. And then I think that's it. That's everything.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I'll say to people, bring your popcorn and your tissues when you're watching this.
Yeah, and it is 2 hours long, and there is some, I will put that there's a few triggering topics in it, so it's not for young kids, put it that way. But because I know what it's bringing up in the collective, I think it's amazing that when I started the play, there wasn't this kind of, it didn't feel like this momentum and this movement, and so many people doing great witchy work that we can connect. So so I do remind people and flag people that yes, I'm a healer and I work one-to-one with people on these kind of issues, but also that coming together in circle and journey into the lands and the work that you do, and there's more of it coming, which is perfect and still going, that it's very powerful for us to join together as well. So so we'll share the links of what you've got going on, and I know you do so many wonderful talks about the sites, and the gnosis is coming back through you, and I love that, because it's been a great learning about reclaiming our earth back as witches as well. So
the indigenous roots and the language of the land, the soul language of the land. The native soul language of the land.
Soul language of the land, I love that.
Yeah, it really is. Wow. I'm going to watch this back to learn. I've learned so much.
Yeah, I will.
So much. And you mentioned ley lines, and I'm thinking, bing, like that's another conversation.
I know, I was about to go, oh my God, I could say so much on ley lines. I think we might need to do a part 2. Because there's more, isn't there? I was like, ley lines. There is so much in ley lines. I was like, could I condense it and be really quick?
Well, I love that you're bringing this out at Summer Solstice, because I was just sharing that in a book I'm reading, Kitchen Witch by Sarah Robinson.
Yeah.
She talks about these seasons of the year were intentionally chosen to persecute and kill the witches at these times, when we knew these were the times that we honored the earth. So it's so powerful that Awaken comes out on the longest day.
And it's set on I can't say too much because I don't want to give away a plot point, but when they go into court, they say on the 31st of October 2023, which is Samhain. So it's dated when the incident happens. It's the witches all came through on Samhain. And I remember someone asked me, well, do you really think you should do that in a witch's play? And I was like, absolutely, the veil is thinnest, and they wanted to speak loudest that day. They're having their day. So so I very much wanted to, when it goes into full performance, to have it on Samhain. So yeah,
Amazing.
the light
Which
and
is the Celtic New Year as well.
wow. Oh, I'm such a Celtic witch. How about that?
Isn't that
Yeah.
amazing? Yeah,
And
you
I
were saying the
will,
light in the dark.
yeah, and that brings me back to the very short, and there's lots to say on ley lines, and there's some wonderful people out there that do it, but that also many of the witches were killed where the ley lines are most powerful, and there's much more to that. So it's like that is kind of the reclamation and the honouring to go to those places, and and they weren't given proper burials, and it just goes to show that the real reason the persecution happened were by people that knew what they were doing, and people that by reclaiming this knowledge of the earth, of the ley lines, of the stories, of your soul, of your medicine, you are taking back what was stolen from you. So it's the most powerful act of witchery you could do.
Wow, this is the true craft of the witches.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. This has been amazing.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been so good to speak to you.
And as Cheryl mentioned, all the links will be in the video, the description below. And yeah, let's do this again.
Yeah. Part 2.
And let us all know in the comments below how this is moving through you.
Yeah.
And what questions or insights you have as well.
Yeah. Witch Gnosis is more than welcome.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much. I will see you all again soon.
Bye.